Hello and welcome. This is Pre-Uni College. This lesson is intended to provide information about thinking skills and how to solve these questions through strategical steps. These logical explanations and solutions will be beneficial, however, please be advised it does not give all the answers to solving the thinking skills questions. More importantly, consistent study and reading are essential for successful results. Pre-Uni College has always taught strategies and tips to students on how to approach questions, and this lesson is intended to guide and benefit you. This lesson and guideline about thinking skills is not intended as a shortcut to understand thinking skills. Students must study consistently to achieve successful results. Now let's begin the lesson. Welcome everyone to Part 2-2, Lesson 1 of Problem-Solving Strategy for Thinking Skills. In this part, we will be going through the types of problem-solving questions you may encounter. We will also be learning some tips to solve these problem-solving questions. There are three types of problem-solving questions in thinking skills. They are finding procedures, identifying similarity, and relevant selections. We will be covering identifying similarity in this lesson. What are identifying similarity questions? Identifying similarity questions are questions where students are presented with information in more than one way. These questions rely on students' ability to interpret the information and recognize the relationship and similarities between sets of data to answer the question. If we break down each word of the question, identifying is the act of establishing and indicating what something is. Similarity is the state or fact of having resemblance in certain aspects or features. Essentially, we need to use logic, which is the foundational part of problem solving, to look for and interpret the relationship between pieces of information, and then use our own understanding of mathematical concepts to solve the question. Identifying similarity questions typically use the following mathematical concepts in which students should have a strong grasp of. These are table and graph, making conclusions, arrangement, and measurement. In this lesson, we will be covering the first two, table and graph, and making conclusions. Table and graph questions will typically provide students with information presented in a graph and information in a table. It is up to the students to identify and interpret the relationship between the two sets of data. Consider the following example. The number of students who attended an STTC class per day is graphed below, and the number of classes on each day is shown in the table. In each class, there is the same number of students. How many classes are on Saturday? To solve this question, make sure you understand the information. Then analyze the data and identify similarities. Then lastly, figure out what relationship between the two sets of data and use appropriate calculations to find the answer. The solution of the question are as follows. On Friday, there are 30 students and there are 3 classes, as seen on the table. 30 students, 3 classes. Since there is the same number of students in each class, 30 divided by 3 is equal to 10 students in each class. That means the number of classes on Saturday is 50, which is the number of students on Saturday, divided by 10, which is the number of students in each class. So 50 divided by 10 is equal to 5 classes on Saturday. Making conclusion questions requires students to use their logic to accurately interpret and infer conclusion by finding similarities. Consider the following example. Amy goes to Pre-Uni College on the days that start with a T. John goes every 3 days. If today is Monday and John went today, how many days will John have to wait to see Amy at Pre-Uni College? To solve this question, make sure you understand the information. Then analyze and identify similarities. Lastly, figure out what relationship between the two sets of data and use appropriate calculations to find the answer. The solutions of the question are as follows. 3 days from today is Thursday. 1, 2, 3. Because today is Monday. So that means the next day John will go to Pre-Uni New College is a Thursday. Amy will also go on this day because Thursday starts with a T. Therefore, John will have to wait 3 days to see Amy at Pre-Uni New College. When looking at problem-solving questions, this is a general approach that can be used to solve questions. Let's look how we could apply these tips to identifying similarity questions. The first step is to read the question. If you misunderstand or misinterpret the question, your solution may be incorrect. The second step is to understand the problem that needs to be solved. In problem-solving questions, many pieces of information will be provided and all related. Therefore, a thorough understanding of the question is necessary. The third step is to identify and process which pieces of information are needed to solve the question. In many questions, much more information that is needed is available and provided, and identifying which of the following information is not necessary is important. The fourth step is to analyze data and represent it in different ways. Presenting information in different ways helps to recognize patterns and gain further insight. The last step is to solve the question using the appropriate number concepts and processes. Use the necessary mathematical concepts and processes that you know to find the solution. Let's look at this example of a table and graph question from the Selective Sample Thinking Skills exam. 150 people were asked to name their favorite type of movie. The results were as follows. Fantasy, 66. 42 people liked comedy, 27 liked romance, and 15 liked horror. No other types of movie were chosen. The information was entered into a computer in order to construct a pie chart. However, one of the types of movie was missed out. As a result, this was the pie chart that appeared on the screen. Which type of movie was missed out? This question falls in the identifying similarity question category, as this question requires students to identify similarities between the information in the table and the information in the pie chart, and answer the question by using the process of elimination. Then let's apply the general approach method to solve the question. The first step is to read the question and determine what it is asking. Since it is asking us which type of movie was missed out, we want to determine the relationship between the table information and the graph, and determine which category failed to be inputted. Step 2 is to understand the problem that needs to be solved. Looking at the information provided in the question, we can see and understand the number of people who chose each category, and the resulting graph that is missing a category. Step 3 is to identify and process which pieces of information is needed. Key information 1 is 150 people were asked to do the survey. Key information 2 is one of the categories were not included in the pie chart, and key information 3 is that the number of people who chose each category is given to us in the table. Step 4 is to analyze the data and represent it in different ways. We can determine the percentage of people who chose each category out of the total amount. Firstly, fantasy. 66 chose fantasy out of 150, which is equal to 44%. Comedy is equal to 28%. Romance, 18 people chose romance. And finally, horror, 15 on 150, tells us that 10% of the people chose horror. This helps us solve the question in an easier way. And finally, step 5 is where we can solve the question using the appropriate number concepts and processes. Since there is one section that is larger, the larger section, and smaller than the quarter section, the quarter section must be comedy or romance. The larger section is more than twice as large as the quarter section. There is no category that is twice as large as comedy, so comedy must be the missing category. We can see that fantasy is more than twice as romance, and we can see that horror will be the smallest. So therefore, we understand that comedy is the missing one. Now let's continue to look at another example of a table and graph question from the Selective Thinking Skills exam. 60 people are surveyed on which board game they like most out of 4 board games. 15 people preferred Monopoly and twice the amount of people preferred Jenga over Avalon. Which of the following pie charts represent this information? The question falls in the Identifying Similarity category, as this question requires students to identify similarities between the verbal information and the pie graphs in the answer options. Then let's apply the general approach method to solve the question. The first step is to read the question and determine what it is asking. Since it is asking us which of the following pie charts represent this information, we want to determine which graph accurately represents the verbal information provided. Step 2 is to understand the problem that needs to be solved. Looking at the information provided in the question, we can see and understand the number of people who took the survey and the approximate amount of people who chose each category. Next is to identify and process which pieces of information is needed. From this question, there are 3 key pieces of information. 60 people took the survey to choose between 4 board games. Key information 2 is that 15 people preferred Monopoly. Key information 3 is that twice the number of people preferred Jenga over Avalon. Step 4 is to analyze the data and represent it in different ways. In this question, the information has been presented in a simple form. Putting it in a table may be time-consuming and unhelpful. Step 5 is to solve the question using the appropriate number concepts and processes. The percentage of people that chose Monopoly is 15 divided by 60, which is 25%. The correct chart will also have a portion of people who chose Jenga that is twice as large as another portion that represent the people who chose Avalon. Looking at the options, option C is the only graph that depicts this. A key indicator is the quarter portion to represent the people who chose Monopoly. Let's continue to look at this example of making conclusions identifying similarity question from the Selective Thinking Skills exam. Arthur, Bilal, Connor, and David play regularly in a sports team. The coach has just told them if Arthur does not play tomorrow, then Bilal will play. If Arthur does play, then Connor will play in place of David. So if Bilal does not play tomorrow, which of the 3 will be in the team? This question falls in the Identifying Similarity question category, as this question requires students to identify the relationship presented through the verbal information and make a conclusion based on this. Then let's apply the general approach method to solve this question. The first step is to read the question and determine what it is asking. Since it is asking us, so if Bilal does not play tomorrow, which of the other 3 will be in the team, we want to determine with a certain condition who will be in the team by drawing upon the relationship given to us. Step 2 is to understand the problem that needs to be solved. Looking at the information provided in the question, we can see and understand that Arthur, Bilal, Connor, and David are the options, and there is a relationship between the people. Then we should identify and process which pieces of information are needed. From this question, there are 3 key pieces of information. Key information 1 is if Arthur does not play tomorrow, then Bilal will play. Key information 2 is if Arthur does play, then Connor will play in place of David. And key information 3 is Bilal doesn't play tomorrow. Step 4 is to analyze the data and represent it in different ways. The information has already been presented in a simple form, so putting it in another form may be time-consuming and unhelpful. Lastly is step 5, where we solve the question using the appropriate number concepts and processes. Since Bilal didn't play, this must mean that Arthur did play from the condition if Arthur did not play, then Bilal will play. Since Arthur played, Connor would have played instead of David from the second condition. If Arthur does play, then Connor will play in place of David. Therefore, Arthur and Connor will play tomorrow. And finally, let's look at this example of making conclusions, identifying similarity question from the selective thinking skills exam. I have used 4 identical tiles to make a pattern on the floor. There is a grey rectangle on top of the tiles so that only part of the pattern is visible. This is what we have been given. Using the same orientation as the diagram above, what is the pattern that is covered by the grey rectangle? This question falls in the identifying similarity question category, as this question requires students to identify similarities between the pattern given in the stimulus and identify similarities with the given answer options. Then let's apply the general approach method to solve this question. Step 1 is to read the question and determine what it is asking. Since it is asking, using the same orientation as the diagram above, what is the pattern that is covered by the grey rectangle? We want to determine the best solution from the given stimuli by finding similarities in the tile pattern. Step 2 is to understand the problem that needs to be solved. Looking at the information provided in the question, we can see and understand that part of the pattern is missing, and we need to determine what that missing pattern or missing part will look like. Next is to identify and process which pieces of information is needed. From this question, there are 2 key pieces of information. Key information 1 is that the tiles are identical. Key information 2 is that a grey square is covering part of the pattern. Step 4 is to analyze the data and represent it in different ways. In this question, the information has been presented in a very simple form already, and putting it in another form may be time-consuming and extremely unnecessary. Step 5 is to solve the question using appropriate number concepts and processes. We know that all 4 tiles are identical, so by finding similarities, it is clear that there are shapes in each corner, and each tile will have a triangle and a quarter circle opposite of each other, and squares facing each other. We can determine which shape is missing from the covered corners of each tile. So firstly, if we look at the top left, there is a missing quarter circle. There should be here. If we look at the top right, there is a square, quarter circle, and another square, so it is missing a triangle. If we look at the bottom left, we have a square, a quarter circle, so that means we are missing the triangle. And lastly, in the bottom right, we have a triangle, quarter circle, and a square, so we are missing a square. And as a result, the answer should be A, and we should get this following pattern in the middle. Thank you for watching this lesson, and hopefully it has helped you understand a bit about problem solving and thinking skills and the strategies on how to solve these questions. Please note, as stated in the start of the lesson, studying and reading consistently are essential for successful outcomes.